what are the key attributes or traits, or even just like one key attribute or trait that you see as a consistent recurring theme in the people that you selected to be the highest performers?
Well, this is what I love about the Commando selection course. You're literally assessing people on the Commando values that have been filtered down from what we find to be the best cultural fit, that we can also then train with the incredible resources and equipment and people we have to achieve the specific tactical skill sets to achieve the objectives, etc. It's an incredible backcasting process. At the end of the day, the selection course is designed to break people down physically and mentally to reveal who they are at a true and emotional and authentic level. And the key element, I'll just simply say, is it comes down to service, the ability to put mission and team before yourself, the ability to literally, if need be, sacrifice yourself for the mission and for the team. And then there are other attributes such as trainability, your ability to very rapidly learn and then apply things you've learned. That's that whole adaptability into the environment, the different mission sets, all that we need. And then particularly for remote commando skill set, like teamwork, was just teamwork and initiative were just two huge elements. You needed people who were proactive self-starters, looking for work, as we say, and who knew that they were always a part of a team and how to work within and support and reinforce their team. And I say that because there are other elements of the Special Forces where teamwork wasn't such a high attribute, because there is more individualistic requirements, and there are different values and different nature and nurture outcomes that people are required to, be selected on and apply. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
There's a lot more to it than that, but that's just sort of like a surface level synopsis.
Let me ask you a surface level question then. If you're, there's a young man listening to this podcast, watching, young woman who love the idea of being that kind of person, Special Forces operator. Let's park the mental component, because that's probably a very long conversation for a moment.
The biggest component, yeah.
But let's think about the physical. Like, you're in great physical shape.
Yeah.
And if you put that shirt on me, it's showing some different curves in some different places, right?
There's a massive difference between aesthetics and fitness, though.
So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
What is, if you were to select the best potential training protocol without bringing it down to the rep, but let's just look at it from a top-down approach. What is the best physical training you can do to prepare yourself for Special Forces or Commando selection?
Well, the whole organisation that goes into it is so mature these days that, it's the same as when I did it. They actually, should you apply for Special Forces, they'll give you a Special Forces training program to lead up into it. Like mine, I completed the 12-week program back in the day, and it covers off on everything from cardio fitness through to pack marching with 30 kilos on your back for 15, 20 kilometres.
Why 30 kilos? Is that the weight of the gear?
That's just me picking a number.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it was like 30 kilos was like just a good training figure. At the end of the day, you're never going to be fit enough. And from running selection courses, those who had never been pushed past their physical capabilities beforehand were the first to leave. We'd had former, national level sports stars, Ironmen, things like this try out beforehand. And they had never, for prolonged periods of time, truly been pushed outside of their fitness comfort level. They could push themselves to achieve their own levels, but they never been completely taken out of their own comfort level and environment of physical exertion. At the end of the day, we get to the end of the selection course where you're doing 4 hours worth of tire flipping, treading water with your hands above your head, feeling like you're going to drown, carrying the most ridiculous things, to the point where we had to stop activities because these people were going to try and pick something up and dislocate their own shoulder before stopping themselves. And at that point, you've got the right person that you can train to achieve whatever. At the same time, you don't want them to be so silly to dislocate their own shoulder, don't get me wrong, but they are just willing to sacrifice themselves for the mission or the team.
You know what you call that? Establishing some fucking mongrel. That's what that is. That is mongrel behaviour.
Well, it's actually just this incredible point where people are able to become self-actualized in the fact that they can go further than they think they can. That their head is actually what's holding them back. Their body is so much more capable than most people think they can achieve. And it's creating the environment through physical tasks, through water, through, conditions of the environment, to force them to have to go through those barriers where they're like, I literally can't do this. and that's why you probably heard me talk about beforehand, 80 to 90% of the people on the selection course pull out their form and withdraw themselves. They reach one of those barriers and they decide that they can't go any further. And it's only once people are forced to go through one of those barriers or multiple of those barriers is when they actually appreciate, yeah, I can do this.
There is, as I said earlier, one of the things I love is watching someone who's in their flow, who is so dialed in at what they do that regardless of what comes up, they have pure high agency. They are the tap.
Yeah.
You know, and I can literally picture you at the end of selection course. You've seen that video of that college football player and he's talking about his team. He's doing that interview and he's like, Eden Dennis, dog. Like you're there with the paper.
Mate,
Heston Russell, dog.
Mate, I thought I was going to fail my selection course when I did it. I stuffed up this one last thing. I've written about it all in my book. It's a long story, but the selection course is just incredible because also it just comes down to being able to control at the end of the day, it comes down to being able to control your emotions. You talk about physical and mental, it's actually all about emotions. And like there's just this graduating scale of, you know, the first layer and level that people are in their comfort zone is like their physical performance and getting themselves as fit as they can. But when they're not fit enough for the environment, then they go into the mental space. And it's our emotions that actually help us control that mental space and not being controlled by our emotions, if that makes sense. It should really be like, yes, like this is hard, to be aware this is hard, but you know, I put in the work, I'm now being pushed beyond, everyone else is exceeding myself. Does that mean I'm not as good as them? You go into this comparative state, all the rest, or they isolate you and you have no feedback mechanism and you're questioning whether you're good enough.
So let me ask you that then, how does emotion coexist with high performance?
Your ability to control your emotions and not be controlled by your emotions, in my opinion, is the absolute secret to the highest levels of performance.
And is the only way to train that to take people to the brink?
Absolutely. I mean, experience, 100%. And for me, the ultimate level of performance comes from a place where you're actually able to harness your emotions, your passion, to be inspired, to allow yourself to be inspired by others and to not then have that completely take over. I think that has been what I've learned in reflection. That was kind of a bit of my own superpower as a leader, as a commander, was I was willing to show emotion. That was authentic emotion. I never put it on. The guys used to always say, like, when we'd see you get passionate about something, like we knew, you know, like Hesto believes. And it was always from a place of, you know, mutual respect and from a place of the right thing as opposed to what I thought was right. I remember one of the hardest times for me in my life was when Scott died and I'd literally, you know, picked up his pieces of his body to take him back to be flown home. And just the amazing surge of emotions that comes from one, physically doing that, two, being the commander responsible for the person you've just lost and thinking about his family back home and feeling like you failed. And then all of a sudden having the next 2 days to go and fight the people still out there who you knew do this to your guy, and having all of the military power in the world where I can call down the finger of God to smite my enemies from everything else in between, and to not want to go out there and do it from a place of revenge, being the guy in command and in control and with my team who are ready to follow me as is required, but who would absolutely check me if ever I was overstepping that. And just, you can imagine the emotions out there. And that hardest moment for me in my leadership career was channeling that emotion into responsibility, not into any form of whatever I wanted those emotions to be otherwise.